Good evening and welcome to the PressHub interviews. In this edition we'll talk about communism, about freedom, about memory and of course about the past and how we stand in front of the present and the future. My special guest tonight is Mr. William G. O'Connor, Cultural Affairs Officer at the United States of America Embassy at Bucharest. Welcome, I'm very honored to meet you, Mr. William O'Connor. Mr. William O'Connor arrived in Bucharest in July 2020. He is assigned in Romania as a Cultural Affairs Officer, so his field the press officer and frequently the public officer role since arrival. He is attorney and speechwriter by the education and experience. He practiced law for a decade in Los Angeles prior to joining the federal government. Mr. O'Connor, I met you last summer at the Seagate Memorial as a special guest at the summer school organized by the Freedom House. I saw you visiting the memorial. You stand for more 3 hours in the museum, and I was very impressed about your reaction at the end. You have been deeply silent. Why?
There are many experiences that I will take with me for the rest of my life. Many experiences from Romania. Foremost among those is my time at that museum. It was an honor to meet you. It was an honor to work with Freedom House. It was an honor to support. But oh my goodness, it goes deep. My experiences at that museum were profound. Something I will never forget. It's so incongruous to walk into a building like that. It's a beautiful building. It's beautifully restored from the outside. It looks magnificent. You walk in, there's these vibrant young people experiencing their own nation's history. And there's these people who care about freedom, and there's a positive energy in the air, and you walk in and it's gone immediately, and you're just greeted with these pictures and thousands of people. And it just goes right to the soul. It is profoundly moving. And just to see the pictures, every single man and woman on that wall, every single person, a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a leader, a bishop, and every single one, if those who passed, may they rest in peace, every other single one taken from us. It's incredible. It was absolutely incredible. We will be returning, and I have talked to everybody I can about that museum. It's moving.
How much we need memory to keep the past alive?
I could fall into the cliche of those who forget their past are doomed to repeat it, and I believe there's an awful lot of truth to that. I guess that's why it's a cliche. It is so incredibly important. The past is just, we lose the original voices every single day. Much with the voices who experienced the communist tyranny, we lose those voices every day. We're losing this generation. Just as surely as we're losing the voices who experienced the Holocaust, the Shoah. We need to maintain the past. It shapes our present, it shapes our future. If we lose touch with this, God help us all. Because these are the memories that bear testimony to what people are capable of doing to each other, to what people are capable of doing to their own fellow citizens. It's integral that we keep it alive.
So, which is the place of memory in the reconstruction of the past and the construction of the present?
Yeah.
Why it's so important not to forget?
I think on a number of different fronts, it's so important not to forget. We have to honor those people who had these experiences. We have to honor, at this point, let us speak of Romania alone, but let us honor the people in Timiș. Let us honor in Timișoara. Let us honor the people in '89 who put their lives on the line and died, so that this nation could be free, so that the people could be free, so that Romania could take its proper seat at the table of nations. It's in personal honor to these people for what they did, the bravery, and these are just the average man and woman on the street, no different than us, who put everything on the line so that their children and they could be free. That is critical. But we also, if you look at it in the broad experience of history, again, they're never going to write a book called Great Moderates I Have Known. There's moments in the human experience that define who we are. The good, the bad, and the very, very ugly. If we lose sight of this, we are open to manipulation. We are poorly informed. And ignorance is like a vacuum in a state of nature. It will be filled with something, and very often it's filled with the very worst aspects of our species.
But to understand, to know, means at the same time to forgive.
Yeah.
It's a question that I'm very interested about. It's how can someone from the free world see and understand the horror of the communism?
I think it's one of the defining questions of my entire career. I've been blessed to work in Europe now for almost 9 years. And I will always look at it from an American perspective. I bring a unique perspective, unique only to me, of course, but I bring my background with me. But I still have the American glasses no matter where I go. The Marquis de Lafayette said about America, humanity has won, liberty has a home, the United States. I believe in that. I still do. But I also believe that these individual experiences of people, of nations under tyranny are unique. We can understand them a bit from the outside, but we'll never understand it if we didn't live it. I'm fortunate in that my wife was a Soviet-born Estonian, and her family lived through all of this. And she was a young woman during the revolution. And it's amazing to me how ever-present it is in her experience, how informed her perspective is by her experiences as a young woman during the revolution, as the Estonians and the Baltic people struggled as Romanians did. And it's also important to me that my children, my older children, our 15-year-old twins, that they understand what tyranny looks like, what their family members have gone through, and my wife and I are blessed with a little daughter now. And it's also important to her that she understand that her entire culture almost cracked. They didn't, because they're uncrackable people, much like the Romanians. Almost cracked under the boot of communist tyranny. It defines a population. To an American, I can experience it. I can never experience it. I can talk about it. I can observe it. But I can never interpersonalize it because I just didn't experience it firsthand.
Let's talk about freedom.
Please.
How important is freedom? What's this big concept, freedom?
To me, to sound almost humorous, freedom's like oxygen. You don't miss it until you don't have it. There is nothing more central, in my opinion, to the human existence. Again, I look at things through that American perspective of I have my inalienable rights by dint of my existing as a human being. Among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Without freedom, true and abiding freedom, the freedom to be right, the freedom to be heard, the freedom to be wrong, a man or woman has basically nothing, in my opinion. I would never trade my security, my freedom, for security. I just wouldn't. But I've been fortunate that I, like most Americans, stand on the shoulders of giants. I've never had to make those calls. But I think freedom is to the human organism what oxygen is. Without it, we can never flourish.
Have extremism really disappeared or turned it into forms that claim the common God under the name of ethics?
No.
I mean, there are still residual forms of communism in the actual democratic society.
Yes, I agree. And I don't believe that extremism in any way, and I don't believe left or right extremism has gone. I think it's when we look at this question, and this is one of the things I'm going to go so far as to say inculcate into my children. When we look at extremism in all of its forms, I would quote Camus on this, that the welfare of the masses is always the alibi of the tyrant. It still exists. Concepts of giving up individual rights, giving up the respect and the dignity of the individual human being in the name of some greater good. It doesn't matter who's saying it. It doesn't matter who's promulgating it. It always ends violently. It always ends terribly. It still exists. I respect everybody's right to their political opinion. I certainly don't have to agree with them. But again, I may disagree with what somebody has to say, but I would fight vehemently for the right to say it. But it is integral for any of us that are in these lines of work, that care about freedom, care about human dignity and human rights, that the right to free, open, and unfettered discourse be allowed to continue, in my opinion.
So you arrived in Romania last year, in July 2020. What do you like about Romania?
I think the quicker list would be what don't I like. The only thing I don't like, what I say, nu mi place traficul. Este acasă nebuna. I have loved it. It has been absolutely fantastic. The only sad thing is for me, as Christmas approaches, I know I'm about halfway through my time here. And with COVID, of course, it hasn't been all it usually could be. But the food, I love clearly too much. The food is amazing. I had never had Romanian food before I moved here. The food is fantastic. The countryside is magnificent. But it's just, what I say, eu încerc. Din perspectiva mea, eu cred că acest poporul este ceva unic. Este plin cu oameni bine. I love the Romanian culture. I'm comfortable here. I liken it. I grew up in Southern California, and I liken it to my region in a lot of areas. It's slightly laid back and very hospitable, very friendly, and I will miss it profoundly when I'm gone. I have another year and a half, and I need to make that time count. But seriously, other than the traffic, I avoid Bucharest at any time in the day after like 2 p.m. I just run and hide out by the embassy because the traffic is so wild. But from Oradea to Constanța to Călăraș, I have visited so much of this country already, and it is just.
You travel a lot?
I do. As much as the pandemic has allowed us to, I have been. The Banat is just as beautiful as any place I've ever seen. In Oradea, in Timișoara, in Sighișoara, in Iași, in Buzău, in Bacău, in Vaslui, in Călăraș, and I'm in Constanța all the time.
You was in Dracula house, of
yes,
course.
Absolutely, like every American. Eu sunt un stereotype. But no, I have absolutely loved it. You see the challenges in the country, and Lord knows we have them in ours as well.
It's in a good direction.
Yeah, I think the trajectory is only good. And if you look at where the country's come from 1989 to now, and it's amazing. And so many people think, oh, there's this tipping point and everything is good after this. No, it's not. Reality speaks. You have generations of tyranny that need to be, those don't just come off like a jacket. Those need to be worked and fixed and repaired, and wounds need to heal. You spoke of forgiveness, and I agree. There's no other way forward. But I genuinely think that this country will be absolutely even more amazing. Give it another. But look at the 30 years that would have come. But it's just the trajectory is fantastic, and I will consistently return to see it. So I genuinely, what I say, te iubesc, Romania. Este okay.
How do you see the future of Romania?
Well, I see it bright. I'm an optimist. Otherwise, I mean, was it Winston Churchill said, "Well, there's no other alternative," right? I should be an optimist. I genuinely am. I think you have a population that has struggled with the legacies of external manipulations, disinformation. You still see some of these things going on, but you have a population here that's educated, motivated, and wants better for itself and wants better for its people and for its children. And I think it's just honestly going to continue to get better. I think in my experience, it's critical to the progress of this nation and of all Romanians that they be aware of what's happened, how far this nation has come, and who helped bring them there. Because I hate to say this, as beautiful as this population, as beautiful as this nation is, if the walls could talk, a lot of walls in Romania would weep, would cry, because this country has seen some hard times. And it's heartbreaking to see. They haven't lost their hope. and that's fantastic. I mean, let's be honest, it's one of the oldest languages, one of the oldest populations, one of the oldest places out there. I know Romania will continue to thrive and move in the right direction, but it's a lot to undo. This country's been through a hell of a lot. Not all of it good.
But because you talk about history, how important is the cultural heritage for a country?
I genuinely feel, I guess I'm the cultural affairs officer, so clearly it means something to me, right? But I feel it's one of the most, oh, that sounds like axiomatic, but it's just definitional to who a people are. So often when people talk about cultural heritage, they talk about the good stuff, you know, the beautiful castles. I get it. Or they talk about the great things in my country, you know, the Declaration of Independence, a magnificent document. But I think to truly pay homage to your culture, to any culture, is to be a student of it, to understand it, to appreciate it, to cherish it, to occasionally laugh at it. And Mark Twain said, if you learn to laugh at yourself, you'll never run out of material. And I think that's why I love culture so incredibly much. But without it, a nation and a people need to know what formed them, what brought them to where they are. As I said, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. And I think culture is an incredibly important foundational stone in everybody's life. I try to make sure it is for me and for my children.
I saw that you talk Romanian language. It was hard for you?
Eu încerc fiecare zi. Dar din păcate, eu cred că este, același timp, este o limbă foarte frumoasă, dar din păcate pentru mine este aproape de imposibilă, este foarte greu. Dar eu cred că, serios, eu cred că este pentru mine, este o întrebare despre respect, pentru că eu sunt un guest. So, pentru această țară și poporul este ceva important din perspectiva mea. Dar este foarte greu. Acasă vorbim limba Estonia, so este la fel ca un turnul lui Babel pentru mine. Eu încerc fiecare zi.
Mr. O'Connor, thank you so much.
Plăcere.
This was tonight's edition with a special guest. I'm waiting for you next time to the PressHub interview. Thank you so much.